Thank you so much, Stefan. Can you hear me okay and see my
We hear
screen?
you well, and we see your slide.
Okay, perfect. I just wanted to mention, because I'm following on from some super speakers, that I really had so much envy for the Belgium situation with Peter. Like, if we could all have countries that had these top-down laws and were really like thoughtful, it would be wonderful. I also wanted to say I've seen a lot of Jonisha Pollard's work, but I think the work that the MPPTL is doing is fabulous, and I will speak to NIOSH also. And then Ryan and Kathleen, as I try to attend the CATC, the Canadian Aerosol Transmission Coalition meetings as much as I can, it's just such an energizing group that is working so hard for change in Canada. So I really respect the work that you're doing. And it really, I think, speaks to the need for individuals to advocate as well as for that top-down. Thank you, Stefan, for including me in this presentation, and I'm grateful to you and Yanir and the World Health Network for inviting me to participate. I really won't talk long, but I wanted to thank all of you also for listening to this standards and legislation section, like an area that doesn't seem like particularly sexy, but I think is super important if we're going to make change. And I know that we're all here because we share a desire for clean, safe indoor air. And nonprofit Project N95 shares this goal as well. It's not in the actual presentation, but I don't think. So Project N95, if you're not familiar with us, we are a national nonprofit in the United States. And we're here for equitable access. Like NIOSH was talking about, we're really focused in on affordable, authentic PPE, like respirators, as well as other technologies. We started in 2020, and we tried to get legitimate N95s to healthcare workers. And over time, our mission evolved as we understood that COVID was airborne and that we needed to really be able to protect all people, not just doctors. So we really do focus on offering protection to all people. And like for pandemic, which is still ongoing, wildfires, other infectious disease outbreaks. And we do this through free respirators to the public, or also low-cost respirators. We have our own testing facility where we double check the performance of respirators that aren't regulated by an enforced standard. So my really lovely topic is about enforced standards. And I think about, like, people are like, it rubs people the wrong way, right? To be able to have like an enforced standard. It sounds bureaucratic, but I think that we need to have enforced standards to do a much better job to provide clean indoor air. In the United States, you can clearly see the food sanitation grade when you walk into a restaurant. You know if it's an A or B, and you can decide whether you want to step into that facility. And in the same way, in certain cities like New York City, you can see the energy efficiency of a building. And consumers should have the same assurance that the spaces that they live, work, and enjoy life in are clean, safe indoor air spaces. So I know that this just sounds very bureaucratic, but I also just want to say that regulated standards really help drive innovation. If you saw the crowdsourcing project from NIOSH, there's been some very innovative designs that have come about, because if you know what your target is, then you know how to, like, you can do all sorts of different things like the ergonomy, and there's different kinds of masks that have come about because they meet the standard. And the other thing is that they do present significant barriers to entry from cheap competitors. So while it's a hurdle for you when you're going through that process, it also helps keep out substandard products. And lastly, these enforced standards do help protect consumers. So Project N95 really focuses in on treating, these are the 5, I'm going to go to my last slide here, the 5 areas where we need enforced standards. So we really focus almost exclusively in interacting with the consumer. We have a lot of people who call in or email us, right? So it goes without saying that consumers deserve quality, authentic PPE made to a regulated standard. So we all know what standards are. They define the performance characteristics, claims, test methods. But the regulated standard means that somebody's actually checking, an independent body that's actually checking. And that's what we need across the board on all of these categories in clean air. So the US NIOSH rated respirator, the thing we call an N95, the European FFP filtering face pieces, and the Korean KF94, they are all made to an enforced standard, although the hurdles in those enforcements are a little bit different in different markets. But in general, a regulatory authority check perform to the standard. If you're familiar with a NIOSH rated respirator, NIOSH doesn't just require that stamp of approval at the beginning, right? But they have ongoing assurance that this mask performs. So it's like production lot-based testing, audits and inspections, and then they enforce the labeled claims. We saw a lot of product at the beginning part of the pandemic where people were claiming that they were selling a NIOSH approved mask when they didn't have it. And then there are other claims like it prevents COVID. So it's really important. NIOSH can enforce those standards and we can protect people and we can protect the companies that are producing that. So I think it's just like, if I can say one thing, we need to have a regulated KN95 mask standard. If you're familiar with the KN95, it's the most popular type of mask sold in the United States. It's made to the Chinese GB 2626 2019 standard. I have no issue with the standard. However, there is no enforcement at all of the standard. When you buy a KN95, you literally have no idea if this product actually performs as described. People think of them as an N95 with ear loops, which is like, hurts my head to say that out loud. But the thing is that these are not, they're not checked by anybody. So I think it's just super important to have. So that's my first point. We need to have regulated standard for KN95. I don't think the Chinese government is going to do that. So somebody else needs to step up and do that. The second thing is that we don't have a child or consumer standard, right? The US standard is for industrial needs, makes total sense, but the world has changed with the pandemic. So we know, and Janisha talked about it, but elderly people, people of different races, children, women, they have different facial structures, right? And these masks don't fit all of these different groups well. And so we really need to have a consumer standard, a child standard. And then as Janice mentioned, there's no fit testing for consumer masks, and there's a lot of interest in that. And so whether it's at a firehouse or your hospital or a clinic, so I know that in the US, NIOSH is working diligently on these issues. I will say, I hold NIOSH near and dear to my heart. This agency is underfunded and it's limited in how much it can do. And they have great expertise. So I would encourage people, if you're in the US, advocate for more money for NIOSH. I'd love to see their stuff come to fruition faster. My third area is we need to enforce standards for HEPA air purifiers and FAR UV. It's so exciting, right? We have these FAR UV, germicidal, radiation to clean the indoor air, HEPA air purifiers, and they're really exciting developments for homes, schools, and workplaces. But there's no enforced standards. There's actually a lot of different standards, but there's no enforced standard on the finished device. And so this means that consumers are really not protected at all in this process. So the one place where there is, if you're doing a germicidal UV in a hospital, or you're doing even a HEPA air purifier that's labeled for use in a hospital, that comes under the jurisdiction of the FDA. But otherwise, for consumers, it's really like caveat emptor. Anybody, you have to just be careful. The EPA has these really fabulous Energy Star ratings that for all of these HEPA air purifiers, but many people are really confused. You wouldn't imagine how hard it is. Eric Fielding mentioned this. People don't know how to measure their space. It's mind-boggling to me that that's the case, but people are like, I'll lie down on the floor, and I'll see how many of me I can get across my room. They don't understand how to measure their space. And when you're dealing with consumers, it has to be super simple. And so I would just say that they're really ill-equipped to understand these technologies, and they rely on marketers' claims, right? So they say in a 300 square foot space, this works in a 300 square foot space. But why does it work? How many air changes per hour are you getting? What's your clean air delivery rate? And what speed is that device set on to achieve those things? So these are things that people don't understand, that you have to set it on the highest level. AHAM, which tests some of these devices, the AHAM setting, it's tested on level 3, or level 5, the highest level, which is the noisiest level. And people go in and they set it to a lower level because that's what they want, but they're not achieving what they think they are. And so I would just say that it's really super important that we continue to advocate for protections for consumers. Substandard masks that don't fit, they give you a false sense of confidence. You rip off the consumer. And likewise, these new high-tech solutions are super sexy. They could be a big improvement. Without a regulated standard, consumers can be spending their hard-earned money on a false promise. So I hope that all of you will join me in calling for regulated standards for safe, clean indoor air. So thank you very much, Stefan and Yanira and the whole World Health Network team and all of you for listening to my soapbox. Thanks.